The auto bubble in Canada is popping and used vehicle prices are dropping at an alarming rate. What is going to happen? Are prices going to fall further? We're going to dig into all of that in today's video. So let's go over to this. This is the ADESA Canada Price Index for used vehicle prices, and this is December 2022, so it's really recent, and they're saying about their dismal statistics, and we're going to dig into some of this data right now to see what's going on. So 2022 has ended with dismal statistics. 2022 has been the worst sales year since the recession in 2009. And they said we weren't even in a recession during 2022. And the Bank of Canada just hiked the other week. So it is crazy. We are sat here in January of 2023 and we are still watching the Bank of Canada hike, and you are getting this type of data that is coming out. This is just not good news. So what else are they saying? What does 2023 look like? We see 2023 like 2022, but we do expect the recovery to begin late 2023 and into 2024. And of course, they give no data to support that theory. And I hear a lot of people pointing to that as well. And I guess that's because they're thinking interest rates are going to come down. Just like a lot of mortgage brokers and real estate agents are thinking, they're just thinking, well, interest rates will come down, that will boost affordability again, and therefore prices will go up. And what they're not thinking about is why that's going to happen, and that is very important to think about here. We are forecasting that while residual values will come down, they will come down gently and remain higher than they were pre-pandemic. Price movements by segment were mostly negative in November. Mid-compacts showed the most decrease at 7.7%. Next are the compact SUVs at 6.5%, followed by minivans at 1.5%. Some positive segments are the mid-size SUVs, which increased by 4.2%, the mid-size at 1.9%, and the full-size pickups at 0.3%. And what's really interesting about that is we actually sold a vehicle back around July last year, and I've started to look around again right now to see what's going on in the market, and it is unbelievable. It is unbelievable what I'm finding out. So for example, this one car that I looked at, it's been on the market since August of 2022, and we're in January 2023, and they have reduced it in price multiple times. It's a popular vehicle, and I'm just looking thinking, what is going on here? And it doesn't matter, you know, if I inquire about any vehicle, I get a response back just like that, and it is so swift that it's almost like, okay, they're not doing anything, they're really quiet right now, which just goes to show, because you know, Canada produces a lot of vehicles. They are actually a quite a big point of production for vehicles. So actually, vehicle sales tanking, that's not good news for the Canadian economy too. The data is adjusted for a large number of variables, including type of vehicle, mileage, age, and season. A two-step statistical filtering process excludes extreme values in the raw data. The resulting index provides a picture of the Canadian used vehicle market and depicts the trend of used vehicle prices in Canada. And what's really interesting, this is the chart that they're referring to. This is the used price vehicle index, and you can see it's absolutely tanking after this mass rise that we had during 2020 and 2021. And you know, I really have to thank Lucky Lopez for this, and I've tagged him in the title of this video, and I would urge you to go check out his channel after this video because he provides amazing data and insights, and he's in the US. But you're seeing the same things play out in Canada, and I think it's actually going to be much worse than the US, and I'm going to do a part 2 video on that, because just looking at the immigration picture, there is a massive subprime auto market here in Canada that nobody is really talking about or factoring in. And as Lucky said, a lot of people within the industry have been silenced talking about, the defaults, the delinquencies, everything that's going on there. And he said that 1 in 4 prime borrowers is currently 30 days past due on their auto loan, and then 1 in 6 is 90 days past due on their auto loan too. And that was on a podcast that he did with Adam Taggart on Wealthy. I would highly urge you to check that out. It was fascinating to say the least. So sales are absolutely tanking. People are defaulting. They're not paying. We had all the stimulus money that came out in 2021, and a lot of people went out and bought a car, and lending standards were dropping, but they were already rock bottom in Canada. That's what people don't understand. I know a lot of people who've had experiences with this firsthand as an immigrant, as people that have got loans without even putting their social insurance number on the application, and just things you wouldn't believe. And these have been with banks like TD Bank and RBC. It's always these big 5 banks, but these big 5 banks, they carry the most risk. Bank of Montreal, CIBC, TD Bank, RBC, Scotiabank, they all have a lot of these loans on their books, and they could impact them in a bad way, which we'll talk about further later on. Next thing I want to show you is the delinquency rate for non-mortgage debt, so you can get an idea of the picture by city across Canada. This is Q3 data. We're still awaiting the Q4 2022 data. So this is really old, and this is Equifax this comes from. So you can see here Calgary, one of the higher ones, 1.14% delinquency rate. Edmonton, 1.41%. Toronto, 1.14%, same as Calgary now. St. John's, 1.17%. Fort McMurray, 1.62%. So those are the big centers in Canada with high delinquency rates on non-mortgage debt. So those are places where you're likely going to see a lot of bank repos. Now, when the weather gets better, I'm actually going to go to the repo yard and show you, hopefully talk to some people as well, so you can see the actual boots on the ground footage. And I actually want to go to this GMC dealer that's in town here, because I have never seen anything like it, because they are parking cars illegally on the sidewalks and all kinds of things because they haven't got the space. They're just literally, there's no space, and it's been like that for months now, and the weather hasn't been good. I've wanted to go down there and shoot it, but they probably wouldn't like that too much. So anyway, that's the picture of the debt situation across Canada. And then if you look at this, I think this is really interesting. So Better Dwelling put this out a while ago. So you can see that the delinquencies of credit cards and auto loans, they're increasing. They're increasing exactly like they were in the US. And I think that's really, really interesting to note that we are following the same trend as them, because a lot of Canadians like to think that they're different from the US. They're better in some way. The banking system is more rock solid. People that actually have experience of the banking system in Canada, we actually know it's a lot worse than the banking system in the United States, because the US sort of learned from many of its mistakes in 2008. Not all of them. There's still massive problems in the banking system, which will be exposed in the US too. But Canada didn't learn anything from 2008 at all. In fact, it used 2008 as a moment to just change and completely drop their pants, essentially. So it's kind of funny when you really think about it, but it's not so funny. If we go over to this Wolf Street article here, I want to show you this, because this is in the US. It shows you the delinquencies going back to the Great Recession. And if you look at the delinquencies, this data was tracked by Fitch. They were actually heading up to a level that surpassed the Great Recession in 2019. So I think that's really interesting, because if you head over to the auto sector in Canada, you saw 2019, it was heading up as well, exactly like in the US. So they were following again. And obviously this is 2022 Q3. We haven't got that Q4 data yet. And then when you look at the banks, you have to realize that the used car market is absolutely massive. There's no precise data on how large the auto loan industry is within Canada, but from a 2016 report, if you just kind of extrapolate the figures out from the growth that they had from 2016, you're looking at a market that is between $250 billion and $350 billion in size. That is just the auto loan industry in itself. And you have to remember that most of that risk is concentrated between 5 banks: RBC, TD, CIBC, Bank of Montreal, and Scotiabank. To put that into perspective, Scotiabank only has $529 million in credit loss provisions right now, and it has $800 billion in loans. So that is absolutely crazy when you think about the amount of money they have for credit loss provisions, the amount of loans they have, and then you think of the size of the auto loan market as well. And we are just talking about auto loans here. When you factor in the housing market and all these other spigots, you are talking about just an insane amount of risk concentrated between 5 banks here in Canada. And this is what people just can't understand. The thing is, the bank doesn't have to go bust by just literally their assets going to zero. That's not even what happened to Lehman. They can go bust by just getting a margin call. Essentially, they get so many credit losses and they don't have enough cash to deal with it. They haven't raised enough cash during that quarter, and they get a margin call essentially, and they go bust that way, because essentially it only takes one bank to question their assets worth and say, actually, we don't want to touch your assets, or even them to report terrible earnings, and then the other banks are like, oh, maybe we don't want to touch what they're selling anymore. And then it just creates this toxic environment where banks can have massive troubles. And that's essentially what kind of happened during the GFC that caused the dominoes to fall down. And using Scotiabank as an example, if just 4 to 8% of the auto loans went bad, then they would be looking at billions of dollars in losses, and that is just for auto loans. So this is not a small thing. This is absolutely massive. So to summarize what's going on here, you've got used vehicle prices that are coming down at an alarming rate. You've got a lot of people that are negative equity on their auto loan. You've got loads of people who are struggling to make payments for their massive auto loan that they took out during 2021 during the stimulus, and now people aren't in a good place at all. So what this essentially means is the recipe in the auto market is not good at all, and I'm seeing it firsthand because as somebody who is actively dipping their toe into that market right now and looking around, I can tell you that the market, I've never seen anything like it. There's just nothing is really moving, and it's kind of unbelievable that it isn't being reported on at all here in Canada, and it's being suppressed so bad, but that is what's happening. So prices are going to continue to fall. Obviously, the rosy outlook is that interest rates are going to come down towards the end of the year, and then demand is going to miraculously come back out of nowhere. But what they're not thinking about is interest rates are going to come down because of a recession and lots of people losing their job, which is going to impact the auto market in a worse way than interest rates just going up. And that's what people don't even understand about the mortgage market either. You know, unemployment is a more toxic substance for the mortgage market and the auto loan market than interest rates going higher, believe it or not. So anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, you might like this one here. You might also like this one here. Check out that podcast Adam Taggart did on Wealthion with Lucky Lopez. Check out Lucky Lopez's channel as well. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.